Well, a few months ago, we recorded a video on the 10 worst UK oil fields, and we'll put a link below for anybody who didn't catch it and may want to have a look at our assessment of what weren't the best developments in the North Sea. At the time, we thought about, well, what about if we did the worst exploration wells in the world? Well, to that end, we asked our subscribers and our viewers to send in suggestions, and we've compiled that list and we've put together what is an initial list of the 10 worst exploration wells in the world. Now, this is going to be controversial. I'm sure you've got lots in mind and you can think of some which should be on the list. Hey, we may do a follow-up video and capture those. For now, enjoy. Some time ago we did a couple of videos. One was the 10 worst UK oil fields and the other one was the 10 best UK oil fields. One of them was twice as popular as the other. I'll leave you to work out which one you think it was. Here today we're going to look at the 10 worst exploration wells. So here's the feedback we got from subscribers. Now, we've redacted the names and the photographs to protect the very innocent. We kind of had many suggestions for what to include in here. What is our definition of the worst? Well, we've kind of kept it fairly general. Obviously dry holes, that were expected to perhaps low risk or, expected to come in and they didn't work. There's also, we've included sort of some near misses and sort of oversights where actually hydrocarbon was detected but wasn't recognized for what it was. And there are a number of examples of those. We've got wells or opportunities that came in well below expectation. And so they maybe found a little bit of oil or gas, but way below what was required to make an economic development. Now, we recognize throughout this video that we're using 2020 hindsight. And at the time, there was uncertainty, there was risk assigned to these things. So we've had a look at it and we've used the learning since to better understand what went wrong with these opportunities. Now, we've excluded sort of disasters, and that was the subject of a recent video that we brought out. So the first series of exploration wells that went badly wrong are looking at sort of volcanic terrain. And we're going to start west of Shetlands, in the northeast Atlantic margin, in places like the Faroe Shetland, the Mora Marginal High, and the Rockall Trough. Now, here's a couple of references to very good papers that you can read on these areas to get a better understanding for them. We'll look at this region, so highlighted on the map here, and you can see these are some of the wells that have been drilled in the area, and today we're going to look at Lagavulin. We're then going to go on and have a look across the median line into the Faroe Isles water, and we're going to have a look at the well Brugdan. Here's the location. These are the two wells we're going to have a quick look at. Can't really say Lagavulin without mentioning my favourite single malt, and to many they describe it as smoky, seaweedy, medicinal. Oh, not everybody likes it. I think it's wonderful. Recently visited the distillery, which has got to be highly recommended. In fact, if you go over to the island of Islay, you can get to the Ardbeg, Lagavulin and Lefroy distilleries. They're only 2 miles apart, so put it on your bucket list and get over there. It is well worth it, I promise you. So here is a regional seismic line, and this shows the location of Lagavulin. So it's in an intra-basin high. This is the location of Lagavulin, and this was the structure that it was going to encounter. Here's an interpretation that was being done. And now we can have a look at the well itself, and we can see that it's gone down to a younger sequence here. We've got into the top of the volcanics, and you can see we continue through volcanics and lavas and volcanics and volcaniclastics and lavas all the way to TD. So not the most successful of wells. Pause the video to have a look in more detail. Another well across the median line into the Faroe Isles waters, and we have a look at the Brugdan well. And here is Brugdan, the structure anyway, and you can see it's a very, very pronounced high, a four-way dip closure, elongated in the northeast to southwest direction. And if we have a look on the next slide, you can see this has got to be one of the least welcome composite logs. A TD here of 16,714 feet subsea. This is a very, very deep well, and all that rock and not a grain of sand just stayed in lavas all the way to TD. Volcanic provinces, they are very difficult, mainly because seismic signals just don't get down through all of this irregular volcanic flows to give, there aren't as many coherent seismic horizons to map and follow around. So it is a kind of chaotic signal at times and very, very difficult to interpret. But this well, it wasn't one of the best, that's for sure. If we look here at the Lusi mud volcano, again, sticking with our volcanoes theme, and you can see there was a well drilling, and here's, you can see there's all these buildings, etc. around here. Now, there is a slight difference in scale between these two, but I think you'll definitely get the idea that the well that was drilled was back in May of 2006, and it caused an eruption, really, of the Sidarajo mud flow, and that went on for about 10 years. It drowned 15 villages, and it displaced somewhere in the region of about 40,000 people. We did think about putting this later on in the video, but as we were on the subject of volcanoes, we thought a mud volcano, it qualifies. You've got to be careful what you're drilling, and we'll see that repeated further on. Well, that's enough of volcanoes for a while. There are other areas where some fairly interesting exploration wells didn't really come up with the result that was expected. So now let's look at a section we call ambitious step-outs. Well, this is a well that one of the subscribers told us that we must include, and it was this well here. It's to the north of the Brent field and over to the southwest of the Statfjord field, just to the south of Dunlin. And I think the play here was to basically see if there was just one mega field, and there was a case that could be made that might somehow connect up Statfjord and Brent. This is a story that is told. It was within Conoco, as they were known at the time, now ConocoPhillips. And it was back in the late 1970s. They were trying to prove that there was a connection between the two fields, and they drilled this number 6 well. Now, there was a young well site geologist, Dick Selly his name was, who went on and had a very distinguished academic career. But his Conoco colleagues nicknamed him Dry Hole Dick after the well only found water-bearing Brent sands. There were no late Jurassic sands in the lows, which I think at the time came as a little bit of a surprise. But anyway, I don't know Professor Selly personally, but I hear many, many great reports, and he went on to have a very distinguished career, despite picking up that unfortunate nickname back in the day. We have done a video on Mukluk, the world's most expensive dry hole, and we'll put a link to that video below. It was a very popular video. We did it with my very good friend Colin Percival. You get a lot of the technical background and a good few laughs as well. It's kind of a light-hearted video, hopefully entertaining. I won't go into the detail of it too much here, but it was located off the north slope of Alaska. It was part way between the Prudhoe Bay field and all the way up to Point Barrow, where there were major seeps at surface. The Mukluk was defined. It was kind of it was considered to be a slam dunk, but surprise, surprise, when it was drilled, it was found a very, very thin column, and it was believed that there were some thief sands above the unconformity that had actually taken the oil. And watch the video for details on that. So there is the thumbnail for the video to look out for on our Trove News channel. Now, hindsight we've mentioned before, and here's an example of mapping from a paper, and we'll put the link below. It just shows that here is a nice looking 3-way dip structure, fault bounded to the south here, and here's a great place to drill a prospect. When it was drilled, it didn't come in on depth, and in fact it was realized that in actual fact the two faults here, joined as one on this pre-drill section, turned out to be two different faults, and this was just a ramp. There was no closure here, and it was consequently a dry hole. Now, mapping, well, sometimes it can go badly wrong, and this is a case of the Conan well in the Irish Sea. This one actually got the most votes from subscribers to include, so we had to include it. So It was targeting the Triassic sandstones, which would been, major gas accumulations in the Morecambe field and here nearby the Dalton field. And it was targeting a structure which seemed to be an amplitude anomaly. Now, this was described as de-risking the prospect, but unfortunately, the prognosis proved to be wildly wrong. There was no trap present. It was a major velocity depth conversion model error, and it was very different to the prognose section. And pause the video to have a look at this if you want some more detail. But here's one of my favourites, and it really is one of the classic anecdotes from the North Sea, and it concerns this well that I'm pointing out here. It's the number 3 well, and it was basically drilled on the boundary of 2 blocks here. This block on the 1521 was operated by one company and one group, and this of 1522 was a different set of companies, but it was decided that they'd drill a joint well between the 2 blocks, and this number 3 well was drilled. Here's a cross-section of the field. If I show where the well was drilled, oh dear, drilled right through a fault. This grey here is the head of the fault, so underneath this zone there is no reservoir. It basically went from the upthrown part of the Scott field, and here's the downthrown part of it. No reservoir was found here. They drilled a follow-up exploration well up on this high and actually found the Scott field. Now, the Scott field has produced a huge volume of oil since coming on production. My favourite, though, when it comes to missing out and not sort of getting the mapping right, involves another giant oil field, and it is the Fahud in Oman. So here you can see the seismic. Now you've got to remember this is modern seismic, but in seismic of the day we'd have seen these events here at depth, and we'd have seen these events, and it looked like there was a high somewhere in this location here. But you can see on modern seismic that very clearly this major fault here, so a tilted fault block to the northeast, and here a very, very different section, and it looks a very different characteristics as well. Now this has been interpreted, and you can see where the oil-water contact is now shown and drawn. But we're looking at Fahud 1 as the exploration well that was drilled, and basically it drilled down and it only just caught a very, very thin column of oil here. So it was targeting the prolific Jurassic Arab reservoirs. It did find a thin Wassia limestone oil pay. The Shuaibah and Nati early and mid-Cretaceous carbonates were were missed. First oil, 1969, and it's very shallow, just an oil-water contact at 1,670 to 1,800 feet. Here's the location of Fahud. You see in northern Oman, here's the capital Muscat here, right on the coast. Here's the location of Fahud. It is a giant oil field. It's 900 million barrels of oil recoverable, and it's operated by Petroleum Development of Oman, PDO. The reservoir is in the Wassia limestone, or also known as the Nati. Oil and gas reservoirs, and then we can see here in the cross-section, this one in particular seems to suggest it didn't find any oil at all, but the previous interpretation we looked at shows that there was a thin column in this very basal sand. Now, I guess this must have really been in the post-mortem for the well that we passed through from very, very young Aruma shales into these Na Umar shales. It was worked out that there was a massive amount of missing section. Here's the well that was drilled here back down into the Wassia, and you can see there's a gas cap. There's a very, very thick oil column, and underneath here's the water-bearing sands. So here are here's the wells here, and there's a follow-up well that was drilled that actually, was on the downthrown side. So 2 wells on the downthrown side. This was the Fahud 1 well. It actually only missed by about 100 meters, and there was a kilometer of throw on this fault. So very, very unlucky, but it makes our list for that reason. And then there are the cock-ups. Well, Lake Peigneur in Louisiana, it's 1980, and Texaco are drilling a well over the lake, and they unintentionally drilled into a salt mine. Now, the salt mine, shown here in this section, actually from the Jefferson Island, and this is a big salt diaper here. But what happened was, once they actually drilled into, and I guess it was some of these faults that actually brought the water. In theory, the well should have missed the salt mine, but some of these fractures, they're linked up, and it brought about the collapse of this salt mine. All the lake water disappeared down a huge, great plug hole. Best description. Now, 55 miners, luckily they escaped, but the surface was devastated. Pause the video and have a read of this for more details. And if you would like to see any detail, then there are a number of videos on YouTube that I would recommend having a look at. It's a lake disappearing in a matter of hours. Quite a story. As for honourable mentions, now, some of these I don't know at all. Well, Kelp 1. Now, my good friend Alan Booth and myself were actually involved in the exploration and discovery of the Brugdan prospect here. Kelp High was located here, and at the time it had been known as a regional geological anomaly, a big high region from the 1960s. Now, there was a moratorium on oil exploration in the area through to 1992, when Woodside drilled the well in 1994. The well was plugged and abandoned dry. It's number 28 on the map here, so it's this well here. Obviously, there were a number of follow-up wells in the region, but none of these appear to have been successful either. So this is what it looks like. Here's the Kelp High. Here's another high here, Flamingo High, and it was actually Brugdan was in between these two here. It looks like there was lacked an adequate cross-seal fault. It was quite late structuration, so there wasn't any hydrocarbons located in the on the Kelp High. You know, this kind of differed from these other highs here up to the northeast. So, you know, the Troubadour and also the Sunrise. These were two fields that actually did work, but Kelp failed. Now, one I don't really know very much about at all, but again, subscribers asked us to cover this one. And this was the Affanga Deep well in Gabon. So here's a location map here, and here is Gabon, and this is the sort of Paleogui river delta mouth area. Lots and lots of oil fields in the region here. And here's the location of Affanga 1. So it's actually in the deep water. It's a post-salt prospect. And we'll have a look at that on this next slide, where you can see that it was in a water depth of over 1,000 feet, and it was quite a deep well, given a 1 in 5 chance of success. Now, the Affanga 1 had actually drilled down here, but it had actually come to TD. I think it may have been hole conditions or whatever. So the Affanga Deep well was actually targeting this Chironian section and also Cenomanian targets. So there were 2 targets in the well. Now, it's above the Aptian, which is this horizon here, I believe. This is the Zanga Salt Formation. So this is all post-salt sequence. Now, size, well, a range, but the mean size for the prospect was given at 170 million barrels of oil at a 1 in 5 chance of success. When it was drilled, the Cretaceous sands were a lot thinner and a lot poorer quality than was anticipated, and there were no significant hydrocarbons in the target formation. Now, there's probably lots of other wells like Affanga Deep, but this one was brought to our attention. Good looking structure, as you can see here. This is the top azale. It's Chironian in age, and a nice 4-way anticlinal structure here. And by the looks of things, some kind of anomaly, seismic anomaly. I'm not entirely sure what this is, but the seismic amplitude obviously didn't conform to structure. You know, that sometimes can be a concern. It didn't work, so it was a contender for the list as well. A bit more detail here, and it shows in this cross section here. Here's the Affanga Marine 1, and you can see this one was the shallow well, and then the deeper one went down. Tested these, but didn't fail to find significant shows in these deeper sands here. But up dip of it, you know, you have Torpille, Jurel, and Peigneur, all had oil accumulations, and they are stratigraphic traps as well. But sadly, Affanga didn't get those sands, or they were very, very poorly developed. So where are we up to? Well, here's the listing. So this is our choice of wells that we've been through so far. Number 10 to be confirmed. And really, we'd invite you to put comments below. Which of the worst exploration wells worldwide would you put on this list? A couple of honourable mentions that we have here, but we're leaving that last spot. We'll maybe do a follow-up video when we get some candidates. Now, when we're looking at exploration, one of the things that we really need to do is understand risk. To do any meaningful statistics, we do need to collate a consistent data set. With TROVE, And this data from the North Sea, you can see that a number of dry hole analyses studies have been undertaken here by Matau, Rudolph and Goulding, Schlumberger and Tierpock. And you can see this is the split that they have. Within our TROVE database for the UKCS, we have details on over 890 prospects where we have risk, and sometimes they're broken down into the components, but overall we get a main risk. Looking at what the main risk is from all 890 prospects, this is the breakdown that we have, not unlike the ones above, basically saying that trap and seal considered the major risks. We break out trap and seal separately in TROVE. Interesting data set. So what have we learned? Well, for the 10 worst exploration wells, they're all failures and a result of some sort of subsurface issue. Now, there were some drilling challenges and perhaps some significant lost circulation. The best geologist, according to Herbert Reed, is he who has seen the most rocks. Now, obviously, gender equality, not big in the past, but he or she who has seen the most rocks. Bad, poor data, well, that's probably one of the reasons why you get bad decisions and poor investment. Now, you do need to understand the provenance of your data. That's what you can do. You can find where all the data comes from. We don't just have lists of numbers. We show where the articles are. We show the hyperlinks back to the original documentation, providing high-quality data needed to make quality decisions. It's, amongst other things, an analog database to assist all in the E&P business. Please get in touch. How big is TROVE? Well, if we take paper thickness at the 80 grams per square meter size, it's about 0.1 millimeters thick. Now, we've got over 250,000 pages in TROVE, so that would make it about 82 feet high, or just about 6 London buses stacked one on top of the other. So TROVE is also growing at the rate of around about 20 to 50,000 pages a year. So this is an enormous volume of data that you can find just about every field and every discovery worldwide. So please get in touch. Thank you for watching. I hope you found that interesting. Please hit the like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Hope to see you back on our channel before too long. Bye for now.